On today's show, the Rockets keep the streak alive in an ugly win against the Mavericks. Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun bringing this one home late. Ime Udoka's third quarter adjustment that helped save this game, and so much more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
A win is a win is a win. Even an ugly one that looked as bad as this one, still counts as a win for the Houston Rockets. What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Fridays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be getting into the Rockets 110-102 win against the Dallas Mavericks. An absolute ugly, like clawing, scratching, get it out the mud kind of win as you'll ever see. This felt very reminiscent of a lot of the Rockets wins from last season. One very key difference is they have Kevin Durant on their team this season. And when it mattered the most, KD showed up in this game in a big way down the stretch of this one. Alperen Sengun was what felt like a very kind of career-defining moment almost late in this game, as well as his ability closing things out. We'll get into how the Mavs were defending KD, Alp, what we saw over the course of this game. Amen Thompson with some absolutely insane highlights, a very pivotal adjustment in the third quarter that Ime Udoka made. And unfortunately, some struggles from Reed Sheppard in this one. I'm going to get to all of that on today's show. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being one of our amazing everydayers. All right, 110-102 win. And this was a game like, credit to the Mavs, because as injury riddled and undermanned as they are, right? No Anthony Davis, no Derek Lively, no Kyrie Irving. They still came into Houston and they brought it to the Rockets. Like, this was not an easy win whatsoever. And there were a lot of facets of this game where the Mavs legitimately looked like the better team on the floor. And there was a point, at some point in the fourth quarter, I kind of like looked down at how much time there was left, and I was like, you know what? Rockets might deserve to lose this game because the Mavs have played like the better team. They've played like the team that wanted to win this game for a majority of the game, right? This was a very sloppy game from the Rockets. Like, this was a game with a lack of attention to detail, a lack of focus, a lack of execution. They were very laissez-faire, turning the ball over. They were not locked in. You had ugly games from a lot of guys up and down the roster, like starting at the top with KD, right? This might be the worst game we see KD play in a Rockets jersey, just from an efficiency, a shooting perspective, all of that, right? He got to his 21 points, but it took him 18 shots to get there. That is awful efficiency for a guy whose efficiency standards are usually through the freaking roof with Kevin Durant, right? So KD struggled. Alperen Sengun, despite finishing with 26, 11, and 6 on 10 of 20 shooting, didn't feel like a great game from LP either. Like, he felt kind of loose with the basketball, still had a few turnovers, didn't feel like he punished the lack of size of the Mavericks nearly as much as he probably should have in this game. And those are your two big guns, your two heavy hitters at the top, right? And I say that as neither of them actually led the team in scoring, because Amen Thompson led with 27, had 20 in the first half, but was relatively quiet, unfortunately, in the second half of this game. But despite the big three getting it done, albeit with some, less than uber efficient type of games, sometimes you just have to find a way to win. And that's what ultimately matters the most. And we're going to get into some of the different ways in which the Mavs really hurt the Rockets in this game, specifically when they were playing their zone defense. The zone defense really struggled in this one against the Mavericks. But the big takeaway here for me is that this is kind of the floor of this Rockets team. Like, they played an awful game in a lot of different regards. They struggled to take good care of the basketball, 17 turnovers in this one that led to 17 Mavs points. They lost the transition battle 24-12. And they did not shoot the three ball remotely close to what they've been shooting it this season. Only 8 of 29 for 27.6%. Now, granted, the Mavs were a little bit worse. They were 9 of 36 for 25%. But despite all of that bad, right, Rockets were still able to come away with the win. How were they able to do that? Well, some of the win conditions that are, one of them's not new to this team, right? The rebounding and the second chance points, but the free throw shooting. That was a big one, right? The Rockets now have a built-in kind of buffer against every team they play against, where they have a little bit of that competitive edge. Mavs, 13 of 20 at the charity stripe. Rockets, 20 of 30 at the charity stripe, +7 in the free throw shooting right there. And that's basically the game. 110-102, that's an 8-point win. You're +7 at the free throw line. Free throw shooting saved your ass in this game if you're the Rockets, but you also look at the other areas, the other win conditions, right? The rebounding was big for Houston in this one, 54 rebounds to just 40 rebounds by the Mavericks, so +14 in the rebounding department. And that +14 in the rebounding department led to a gigantic disparity in second chance points for Houston, 18-6. Only 6 second chance opportunities, 6 second chance points, I should say, for the Dallas Mavericks. And so when the Rockets are doing those things, right, the win conditions that this team has established are their bread and butter, their competitive advantage on a night-to-night basis, the shooting will come and go, right? The shooting will come and go. The turnovers against certain teams, right, will look better or worse. There have been some games where the Rockets, the ball pressure, the turnovers aren't as apparent, right, and they're able to keep them a little bit more limited, keep them in check. Balls hopping around. They're playmaking as a team. They're sharing the basketball well. And then other games, the turnovers have been a bit of a struggle, right? And, the ball pressure or the defense has kind of gotten to them. And so the variance for this team is going to be the ball security, the turnovers, the playmaking, right? Without a true floor general, without Fred VanVleet out there. And then the 3-point shooting variance. Because you're going to have some games where you struggle to shoot the ball from 3, like this one, where all of a sudden, Amen Thompson, only 1 of 3. Josh Okogie, 0 of 3. Sengun, who's been a sniper, 0 of 2. Kevin Durant was at one point 0 for 6 from downtown. How often is that really likely to happen, right? Like, this was one where it was like a perfect storm where everybody forgot how to shoot the basketball pretty much at the exact same time. And despite all of that, because the Rockets have their win conditions, they were able to stay in this game. And even though it was kind of a neck and neck affair, at no point did either team really build up a significant lead. Rockets' biggest lead was 9 at one point there in the third quarter. And the Mavs' biggest lead was only 6. So no double-digit lead for either team in this game at any point. But when the going got tough late in the game, that's when your star players deliver, right? And Kevin Durant delivered. Alperen Sengun delivered. The Rockets don't have just one star that they can go to late in games, right? KD is the alpha. He's the closer. He's the future first ballot Hall of Famer. Yes. But the way that the Mavs were guarding and the fact that they were literally sending 2 to the ball and forcing the ball out of KD's hands, he had a pair of back-to-back 3-pointers with about 5 minutes left in the game, where the Rockets needed a little bit of breathing room, right? 96-92, KD hits that first 3, gives them a little bit of space to just breathe and relax. And then he comes back down, Rockets get a stop, comes back down, immediately knocks down another 3 to give them ample breathing room, right? A little 7-point cushion to be able to kind of calm things down a little bit. Those back-to-back KD 3s were huge late in the fourth quarter. And then a few minutes later, following that up, Rockets had a 103-102 lead, only a 1-point lead. And they called a 1-4 flat. Sengun called his own number, walked the ball up, and decided, you know what, I'm taking this myself. Called a 1-4 flat, ISO'd at the top of the key, drove left on Daniel Gafford. As soon as Daniel Gafford bit on the drive left, he spun back right, finished over the top with that touch, and ball goes in, right? And just a huge bucket for Alperen Sengun when the Rockets needed a bucket, when they were not going to allow KD to have the basketball, and when they needed something from somebody. That felt like a really important moment, kind of almost a coming of age moment for Alperen Sengun in his career, to just be like, no, clear it out. I got this, right? I'll bring us the win. Right. KD did what he needed to do earlier in the quarter, but unfortunately there are going to be games like that. And this is the reality of when you have a star with that much gravity as Kevin Durant. Other guys are going to still have to step up and be able to deliver occasionally, but that's what you get because there was so much attention being committed to KD. Sengun knew he had the opening on the drive because KD was off on the right wing. And they're not going to double off KD. That was the number one assignment. Do not double off KD. Do not let him get a clean shot. Stick with him at all times, right? That's what PJ Washington had to do. So Sengun knew that if he drove in left and spun back right, there would be no help defender there at the nail to try and dig, to try and, double team him to contest his shot attempt. And it led to an open bucket that he was able to get to give the Rockets a little bit of a buffer there. And then they were able to ultimately bring home the dub. So fantastic end to this game. The Rockets were able to close out their first close game of the season, which is always nice. And they did it being led by their two star players, Kevin Durant with a pair of huge back-to-back threes late in this game, better late than never, and Alperen Sengun, who was a monster throughout the game, despite, it's still not feeling like a fantastic game for him, delivered the knockout punch late in this one. Just a great job from those two stepping up when the Rockets needed them most late in this game. Coming up, I want to talk about some of the struggles from this game, some of the things that the Dallas Mavericks did that really hurt the Rockets in this one. Plus, we've got to get to Amen Thompson's insane evening. So many highlight level plays from Amen Thompson, plus Tari Eason stepping into the starting lineup in place of Jabari Smith Jr., some of the Reed Sheppard struggles from this one, a big adjustment from Ime Udoka in the third quarter of this game to give the Rockets some life, and more. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for these opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a bit of a headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I'll never use another ticket buying app besides Game Time when it comes to buying Rockets tickets, buying any NBA tickets for that matter, because they make the process so simplified, so seamless. And my favorite part, they're fully transparent. They don't price gouge. They don't hit you with, last minute hidden fees or digital handling charges or any of that mess, right? The price you see throughout the process is what you're going to pay at the end for your tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying your NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, looking at this game, this was a game where, talked a little bit about it there in that first segment, but just the energy of this game felt like it was all Mavs most of the way. Like the Mavs led for basically the entire first quarter. And even after the Rockets wrestled the lead away from the Mavs in that second quarter and kind of, kept them at distance, little 5-point lead, 7-point lead, 6-point leads, whatever, kind of 2-possession game for most of the rest of the first half. It still never really felt like the Rockets were in control of this game, right? The Mavs were the aggressors. They were the ones that came out and punched first. And the Rockets were able to respond. And again, because of so many of those built-in competitive advantages, the size, the free throw shooting, even a game where the Rockets didn't shoot that well from the charity stripe, right? Just 20 of 30 overall. They got enough out of those other areas to be able to kind of squeeze out this win at the end of the day. But an area where the Rockets have had a bit of weakness this season, an area that was a strength for them last year, was their zone defense. And it continues to be a bit of a sore spot for this team this year, that they are not really defending very well in zone, unfortunately, because last year it felt like the Rockets used the zone defense. Shout out to Frank from Rockets Chop Shop, who used this analogy, and I love it. It felt like last year, right? The Rockets used their zone as a weapon, right? Because they primarily they were using the double big as a weapon to kind of supplement their offense to make up for the fact that they were such a poor offensive efficiency team. They were like, we'll just manufacture second and third chance opportunities, right? We'll put all the size out there. Nobody can beat us, right? And it makes life easier for Alperen Sengun. There's a lot of benefits to the double big lineup with Alpi and Steve-O out there at the same time. And defensively, it held up, right? Defensively, that lineup was fantastic out there on the floor. However, this season, unfortunately, even though the Rockets are still winning those minutes with the double big lineups out there on the floor, the zone, whether it's with the double big or not, right? Just when the Rockets play zone, they don't feel as interconnected as they did last season with the zone defense. And I feel like in particular, it's because they're not using zone as a weapon to disrupt other teams or to take other teams out of what they're doing. They're using it as a necessity to be able to, at times, protect the players that they have on the floor, right? Namely, unfortunately, Reed Sheppard. Because there are plenty of possessions where teams start to try and pick on Reed Sheppard defensively. And we'll talk a little bit more about Reed later in the show, because it was a mixed bag for him in this game, unfortunately. But the Mavs did a fantastic job just carving up the Rockets zone defense. And look, the Mavs didn't hit many threes, but it felt like they certainly found a few pockets here or there where they got, to a 3-point shooter out on the perimeter and were kind of trying to bust the zone open. They also did a fantastic job just slicing up the zone on the inside, unfortunately, right? PJ Washington did a hell of a job, 29 points, 11 of 20 shooting, flashing on the inside of the zone or on the back line of the zone, kind of running that baseline a little bit, getting behind the defense. And the Rockets were not crisp with their rotations in their zone whatsoever, right? Like the Mavs did a really good job targeting these soft spots in the Rockets zone and exposing it. Unfortunately, this game was the most zone defense that the Rockets have played all season. They played about 30 of their 90 half-court defensive possessions in zone. And I don't know, they gave up 0.9 points per possession in zone, whereas in matchup like man-to-man defense, they were only giving up 0.82 points per possession. So it wasn't that much worse. It just eye test told me that it felt bad, right? I haven't felt good about the Rockets zone defense yet this season. Whereas last year, and especially in the playoffs, it felt like the zone defense was the Rockets' best defense at times. And it's been a far cry from that so far this season. Some of that's going to boil down to just communication, execution, guys getting more comfortable defending with one another, understanding their spots. But some of it also kind of comes down to the head of the snake, right? Not having Fred VanVleet out there at that point of attack at the top of that kind of 2-3 weird, freaky kind of zone defense that the Rockets run. If you don't have those two really good point of attack defenders at the top who are locked in and engaged and playing high IQ defense, not gambling, not taking risky plays, it loosens up the rest of that zone, unfortunately. So something to monitor for this Rockets team for sure. But the other guy that I wanted to highlight here, actually, you know what? I'll get to Amen Thompson here in a second, because I did think one of the most pivotal points of this game was that third quarter, where early in the third quarter, Ime Udoka didn't like what he was seeing. Mavs came back, took a lead in that third quarter, and Ime Udoka called timeout 3 minutes into the frame and was basically like, no, whatever I'm seeing, this is not good, right? Can't do this. And he made a very significant adjustment that I thought actually kind of maybe not single-handedly won the Rockets this game, but it certainly gave them the push and gave them the buffer, and they had the most success of the game in that third quarter, where he inserted Aaron Holiday into the game. Aaron Holiday played 9 minutes of that third quarter, and in that stretch wound up being a +7, had 6 points, knocked down a couple shots, and immediately changed the complexion of the game with his floor spacing, because this was a game where the Mavericks defensively were all over Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun, sending double teams, forcing the ball out of their hands, really mucking up the spacing of the Rockets offense. And there were times, especially in the second half, where the Mavs stopped double teaming Alperen Sengun in particular. And And in those moments, Alp did a better job as the game wore on of recognizing, cool, no double team, take it all the way, right? But the Mavs kind of unpredictable defense at times earlier with, sending a double or sending a late double, or, really aggressively trapping the ball or even sending two to the ball before, you even get a play started, like to force the ball out of KD's hands. Credit to the Mavs defense, right? It kind of messed with the Rockets. And because everybody kind of came crashing back down to earth shooting wise, Sengun struggled, Okogie struggled, Amen Thompson only 1 of 3, and you don't really want him taking many threes to begin with. Kevin Durant was struggling because of all the Rockets struggles shooting the basketball from literally everybody not named Tari, Eason in the starting lineup. The Mavs were able to just load up on KD and Sengun. And so Ime saw that and then made the adjustment to bring in Aaron Holiday instead of Josh Okogie, which immediately opened things up for the Rockets. I really thought Ime was going to go back to Aaron Holiday later in this game with as effective as he was in that third quarter. But no, he didn't do it, but it was just enough to open things up in that third quarter to then get the Rockets the breathing room that they needed to be able to kind of, I'm not going to say coast to the finish line, because they certainly did not coast, right? The Mavs made a late push. They were certainly had a chance late in this game. But ultimately it was enough of an adjustment that opened things up for KD and Sengun to be able to continue to get to work there in that third quarter. And the Rockets were able to kind of ride some of that momentum into the fourth. So even when the offense started to bog down again late in the game, they'd already kind of built up that lead. So when they started to lose it again, that's when, you had KD and Alp step up at the end of the game. So they gave themselves a little bit of a buffer. And I thought it was a really important adjustment from Ime Udoka. And this is the thing is, that's an adjustment that Ime has to make because unfortunately shooting is a weakness of Josh Okogie's game. But then you're sacrificing, right, defense versus offense, right? Because Aaron Holiday's not close to the defender that Josh Okogie is. We don't have an official update yet, but when the Rockets get DFS back, this is what's going to be monumental for this team. Is they don't even have DFS yet, and they're playing at this level. DFS is like combining Josh Okogie and Aaron Holiday, right? Because you get yourself a 40% three-point shooter, a catch-and-shoot guy, a guy who can attack off the bounce a little bit, and you're getting the length, the premier wing defense of a Josh Okogie, in a Dorian Finney-Smith, right? But you're not getting the offensive drop-off. And so once the Rockets get him back into the mix, it might be curtains, because then you're not going to have to juggle those offense defense substitutions. You're going to have to make that sacrifice to be able to get the proper floor spacing you want out there, all that good stuff. Coming up, want to talk about Amen Thompson's ridiculous highlight loaded performance against the Mavericks, including a game ceiling block shot on Cooper Flag. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every single game exciting, even when your team's making that late push, especially when your team is making that late push. But hey, maybe you don't like the live betting lines. Maybe you want to keep things simple. Just go take a look at the outright betting favorites to win the title this season. The OKC Thunder still the favorites at plus 200. Behind them, the Nuggets and Cavaliers at plus 700 apiece. The Knicks and Lakers 1,200 and 1,300 respectively. And the Rockets not far off. They're creeping up this list with this 4-game win streak, plus 2,000 to win the title this season. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com, where FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's talk a little Amen Thompson from this one, because Amen he had a monster game. A lot of it concentrated there in the first half and primarily that second quarter in particular. Finished the night with 27 points, leading scorer for the Rockets, 27 points on 11 of 18 shooting. Already mentioned the 3-point shooting, 1 of 3 from downtown, had 5 rebounds, had 4 assists. And look, this was a game where Amen Thompson was the big time beneficiary of all the attention that Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun were drawing. This was a great game from Amen Thompson as that kind of Rockets release valve offensively. And he was the recipient of a ton of great passes from both Sengun and KD. KD finished with 5 dimes. Sengun finished with 6 in this game, right? And it wasn't pretty. There were plenty of turnovers to go around. KD had 3, LP had 3, right? But they made it work and they found a way to get it done. And with no Jabari Smith Jr. in this game, right, you kind of felt that, right? As Jabari has been this ultimate release valve for the Rockets offensively, where once, the Rockets get an action started, be it, going through KD, going through Sengun, whatever, and they get the defense in rotation, a lot of these plays have resulted in the ball ending up in Jabari Smith Jr.'s hands, right? And he's, been great, knocking down shots at a high clip, being efficient, all that good stuff. This game, there was no Jabari Smith Jr., and Amen Thompson was the recipient of a lot of these different passes, and did a great job, especially there in the second quarter. 12 of his 27 coming in that second quarter. And quite possibly I don't know if I want to call it the play of the game, the sequence of the game, but it was just a ridiculous play. Amen Thompson was at the free throw line, missed the second free throw, got his own miss back as he was like careening out of bounds, throws it back into Alperen Sengun, and then reestablishes himself inside, gets back in from being out of bounds. And Alpi lobs it up to the rim, and Amen Thompson goes up with the reverse 360 slam. And it's like he was just hanging in the air for a moment and then was able to force it down. It was ridiculous. The number of different highlight level plays we saw in this game, not to mention the game saving, if you will, game winning. I mean, I don't realistically, how much time do the Mavs have left with, a 6 point, a two possession lead? Maybe if Cooper Flagg knocks down that 3 at the end, and, some crazy shenanigans could happen. Sure. But shout out to Amen Thompson and Josh Okogie, right? Because Josh Okogie had the initial, play on Cooper Flagg that then caused him to kind of double clutch a little bit. And then Amen Thompson was able to come in on the other side and clean up the block to be able to secure the dub for the Rockets. And I mean, throughout this game, he had so many different highlight reel dunks and plays. And one thing that did stand out to me, and this is an area that I think where Amen is going to really be able to ultimately thrive, is using his size. Surprise, surprise, right? This Rockets team using their size as their advantage. But oftentimes Amen is getting guarded by smaller players. Oftentimes Amen is getting guarded by opposing guards, right? And these guys have no chance guarding him from a physicality standpoint, right? This dude is 6'8", maybe 6'9", strong as hell, incredibly fast, right? Speed of a guard, but built like a forward. And my favorite thing that Amen Thompson does when he drives, even more than when he gets to his finesse bag and gets to the Euro step or the midi floater, which we haven't seen a ton of this season, is when he just puts his head down and drives and shoulder checks a guy out of the way. He did that a couple different times to Max Christie in this game, where he drove in and it was getting super overplayed on the drive and just, getting hounded, and then just immediately just drops a shoulder into the guy to get him off. And then he's just right there at the rim and just boom, layup, easy peasy, right? Love seeing Amen Thompson use his size, use his physicality to his advantage, especially on those downhill opportunities, those drives to the basket. But the biggest area, again, in this one was just him being that off-ball presence. Amen Thompson is currently averaging 4.7 points per game on cuts. That's absurd. He's number 3 in the entire NBA on points per game on cuts, averaging 1.75 points per possession on cuts. The only 2 players ahead of him, Walker Kessler at number 1, Mark Williams number 2. Everybody else on this list is a big man. It goes Walker Kessler, Mark Williams, Amen Thompson number 3, then Lauri Markkanen, DeAndre Ayton, Isaiah Hartenstein, Jarrett Allen, and Moussa Diabate. And Ryan Kalkbrenner, who hasn't missed a single shot this season. That's how good Amen Thompson is, playing out of the dunker spot, playing off ball to Alperen Sengun and Kevin Durant, and being that release valve, being that recipient of those passes in and around the rim, and just playing off ball, right? He just has this innate ability to find those seams in the defense and open himself up, and then be the recipient of some of these passes from those other guys. And I mean, it's really pretty to see when it's in action. But that's the thing that the Rockets are trying to juggle, right? Is you have to juggle Amen Thompson on ball versus off ball. And he's done an admirable job settling into the on ball role as well as the crazy thing. So he's not just an off ball demon. But just some fantastic work from there in this one against the Mavs. I will say Tari Eason did a phenomenal job stepping into the starting lineup in place of Jabari Smith Jr. Kind of a quietly good, efficient night for Tari. 15 points, 4 rebounds, couple assists, couple steals, had a block mixed in there, 6 of 9 shooting. Nice. 3 of 5 from downtown. There was maybe like 1 or 2 points where I almost thought like Tari was like being too unselfish. Like he had one play where he turned the ball over because he drove into the defense. Like nobody picked him up. Like he could have just gone up for the layup, but he was like, I gotta shovel pass this off to the side. And that's always the issue, right? Is if you're trying to if you're overthinking and if you're just thinking I need to pass, right? I need to be more unselfish, then you're going to pass up some good opportunities for yourself. But Tari settling in, after that rough kind of start to the season, it's been great to see him bounce back the way that he has. And he was a great, a solid reinsertion to the starting lineup in this game. And side note here, right? No Jabari Smith Jr. Rockets still electing to stay small with the starting lineup, right? Did not reinsert Steven Adams into the starting lineup. So it does kind of feel like that even though they still want to be able to use the Monstars lineup, they still want to be able to go to the jumbo lineup situationally here and there. Ime has not reverted to starting that lineup again since we saw it in those first 2 games of the season. Speaking of Big Steve-O, such a massive impact off the Rockets bench. 9 rebounds, had an assist, couple steals, couple blocks, plus 6 in his 23 minutes off the Rockets bench. Just watching the opposing centers fight for their life every single possession, trying to box out Steven Adams is objectively hilarious. And there was a point where the refs whistled Adams for a foul, trying to with Musa Cisse, trying to, he literally was bear hugging Adams. And I was like, what the, Adams was legitimately frustrated by the call. He walks over to the ref. He's like, are you serious? But provides such a competitive advantage for this Rockets team down low. And Clint Capela too, the Rockets double big, or I guess their backup big man tandem between Steven Adams, Clint Capela combined for 8 points, 17 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 4 blocks. They really got it done, right? And so the Rockets have such a luxury of being able to have not just one great backup center, but 2 great backup centers to really make their size and impact felt against opposing teams. And a little bit more run for Clint Capela in this game, 11 minutes as opposed to he's been getting little 5-6 minute bursts here and there. With no Jabari Smith Jr. in this game, Ime Udoka, was searching for a lineup to provide a little bit of a spark. Jayshawn Tate getting the nod in this game, 8 minutes played. Kind of a rough night for Jayshawn. Did not need to see him take the 2 3-pointers that he took. Adding insult to injury on the Rockets already their already existent 3-point shooting issues in this game. You don't need to see Jayshawn Tate taking early shot clock 3-pointers off the wing, right? If a possession results in a Jayshawn Tate corner 3-pointer that's wide open after running a play or running an action through KD or Sengun, sure. Don't really need to see Jayshawn Tate taking 3-pointers otherwise. Reed Sheppard in this one. This is where we'll wrap things up. A bit of a rough game from Reed. This one was a rough watch. And this one felt okay, here are the young moments. Here's Reed Sheppard getting sped up. Here's Reed Sheppard when he's, struggling to knock down shots. He had some nice passes here and there, right? There were still, he finished with 5 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, but he did have a couple turnovers, only 2 of 7 shooting, only 1 of 4 from downtown. And there's a reason that Ime Udoka elected to go with Aaron Holiday as his changeup, as his counter in the third quarter, instead of just, hey, Reed, get out there, go do your thing off it, because he needed the reliability and stability of the veteran out there in Aaron Holiday. But this was one of those games where like there were some points where Reed got really sped up. And in those minutes in particular, when the Rockets are running their like second unit, call it, with KD and like, 3 or 4 bench guys out there, those are the moments where you really need to be able to effectively like get the ball to KD, run offense through KD. And there's still, that's the hard part for point guards, right? And for Reed especially, is juggling, like, how does he continue to be aggressive, right? And be himself on the floor, which the Rockets need him to be aggressive, right? They do. 7 shots, led the team in field goal attempts off the bench. But at the same time, you also can't ignore, having KD on the floor. You can't ignore having Alperen Sengun out there, right? You still have to find ways to set up the offense properly, get the ball to those guys. And it's a tough juggling act for any point guard, right? Especially a point guard that's effectively still basically a rookie in Reed Sheppard. And then on the defensive end, right, there was just, I'd mentioned it earlier, right? The Rockets run that zone defense to, albeit at times, basically protect Reed Sheppard. Because otherwise, when they don't run zone, when Reed is, when the Rockets are playing in man coverage and Reed Sheppard has to guard one-on-one, it can look really ugly at times, unfortunately. He's had moments where it's looked better, and he'll continue to grow and get better in that regard. And these are the lumps that the Rockets are willing to take right now, right? They're willing to give Reed those 15, 20, 25 minutes a night to kind of work through, some of these deficiencies, for hopefully a better overall player, a better overall product down the line. But you can just feel the difference in how the game felt there in the third quarter when like Aaron Holiday was out there as like the point guard, whatever, versus when you have Reed Sheppard out there, right? Like Reed is still figuring things out. Aaron Holiday, doesn't have the ceiling that Reed Sheppard does, right? Doesn't have like the innate playmaking chops and the feel for the game. And like you see the glimpses with Reed Sheppard, but you also see those pits, right? It's peaks and valleys with Reed, because sometimes it looks really good. And then other times he's struggling or making poor decisions, or you're like, what are you doing? With Aaron Holiday, the vet, it's steady. You don't get those spikes. You don't get those cool, like future, oh my God, he might be a star kind of moments. But you also don't get the valleys. You don't get the struggles nearly as much with Holiday, right? He can kind of hang. You can rely on him to play hard-nosed defense and not be a liability on that side of the floor. So it's just going to be something to have to, pay attention to and watch. And at no point did Ime like give up on Reed. He still played him in the fourth quarter, still went back to him. But when he went to his changeup pitch, he went to Aaron Holiday, not Reed Sheppard, right? Because that was the adjustment for the Rockets there in the third quarter. I will say, what did I had one more thing in my notes here that I wanted to highlight. I could have sworn I had something. No, you know what? I just had that. Oh, you know what? There we go. I had one other thing. It was that early quarter. Sorry. Sometimes my notes are a mess when I watch these games. It was early in the first quarter when Tari had a bad pass to Steven Adams under the paint. Like it was like one of those, like you could have played like the clown music or whatever, tried to pass it to Adams, like back and forth. And like, you just like bobbled the pass a couple times. And then Tari got the pass back and then just twirled on the spot and laid it up for 2 at the rim. I had to highlight that in my notes because I thought it was such a funny little sequence. But it worked out in the Rockets' favor. With that, that's all I have from this game. I'm curious your thoughts on this ugly win against the Mavericks by your Houston Rockets. What were your takeaways from this one? What stood out to you about this game? Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.